Good morning, Dana. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so proud of you. I really am. I mean, it's just you have taken podcasting to the level of total respect because it's not about just one podcast where you're going to have several episodes. You love to build things like stealing Superman. You've got a moment in history and you're going to turn this baby into a season.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what I loved so much about this story. It's a classic whodunit. You have this story about one of the most valuable comic books that exist in the possession of eccentric actor Nicolas Cage, which is fascinating enough. But then the fact that it goes missing and we get to try to track down what happened to it, that's fascinating. But then you get to zoom out and look at superheroes and Superman specifically as cultural icons and what they mean in our pop culture, and trace comic books from things that you could buy for a nickel and then your mom would throw out when they got stacked up under your bed to these priceless objects that are auctioned off by major art auction houses for millions of dollars.
To jump into a story like this, though, it kind of reminds me of trying to get into one of the cities that the Grateful Dead puts together when they used to travel the country and stuff like that. Because you'd have all these Volkswagens in there and stuff. You weren't always so welcomed into their circle, but yet you and with the comic books, it's the same thing. Did they look at you kind of weird, going, "What are you doing here, Dana?"
It's interesting. Most of the interviews and research in this podcast was done by the incredible writer Jake Rosen, but I was immediately drawn to the story. I've actually written several Marvel comic books, and I wrote for the television series She-Hulk. So I love the comics world, and it was fascinating to get to take a look at another side of it.
Landing those interviews, I mean, that took time because one of the things that you've mastered with all of your podcasts is timing. You have the right quotes at the right time, and it doesn't feel like a soundbite. It really feels like it's a real story.
That's the dream. I think using interviews to tell a story is kind of the best way a podcast can do it. I want listeners to feel like they're there. I mean, podcasting is such an immediate medium, right? It's you're speaking into a mic and listeners hear it directly in their ears. It feels so immediate. It's almost like you're talking with a friend, and there's so much trust that comes with that. I want to do the story justice, and I want to keep the listeners engaged.
What attracts me to this podcast is that I grew up listening to Radio Mystery Theater on late night radio in Billings, Montana. And so you build such a mystery in this because was it the butler? Was it the security? I personally said at the very beginning it was Lisa Marie Presley that took the book. But anyway.
Fascinating.
But you have an edge to mystery about you.
Thank you so much. I mean, I love a mystery. I think sort of the best part about a classic whodunit is setting up the characters, setting up the suspects, and then just trying to figure out what happened. I mean, I don't want to spoil this podcast, but it's an interesting saga, and you will leave with answers, but also more questions.
Well, and you're gonna also leave with going, what? It's over? No. That's when I want people to find your other podcasts.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I have this podcast called Noble Blood that comes out every single Tuesday. And unlike Stealing Superman, which is one story that builds, every episode of Noble Blood is a different historical story. It's an exploration of something unusual that happened in history, probably the type of thing you wouldn't learn about in history class. And either a monarch or a noble involved. And I love telling those stories because even people who don't think they're interested in history or who it wasn't their favorite subject in school, I think history is so interesting when it's not just battles and dates that you have to memorize. When you realize that these are weird and influential people going through strange and unusual stories. I mean, it's just storytelling.
Can you imagine your life without the power of the microphone? Because there was once an age where we didn't have podcasting, or people thought of it as just being a hobby. Today, it's a walk of life.
It really is. I mean, I've loved telling stories in every medium. I've loved, I write novels. I've written for television. I've written, journalism. But I love that I also get to podcast. I mean, I love that this is an entirely modern way of telling stories and connecting with listeners. And I feel very, very lucky also that there's a job I can do with no makeup in my closet.
I'm sitting here in my pajamas even as we speak. This is the reason why you can't see me. You don't want to see me in the morning. But I got to ask you the question, as that voice that you're developing and have developed, have you reached that point yet where the writers come to you say, Dana, we don't want you to write it. We just need you to voice it. Have you reached that level yet?
That's exactly what Stealing Superman is. Actually, it was Jake Rosen, the amazing writer and investigator on this. We worked together on the podcast Haleywood, which is about Bruce Willis moving to a
Oh my
small
God,
town.
I love that.
Oh yeah, and so we worked together on this, but it was Jake's baby, really, from beginning to end, writing the story and tracking down the interviews, and I was just happy to be a part of it.
Wow. Well, kudos to him as well as you, because this is every reason why I don't ever want to host another party in my house, because I am a collector of many things, and anytime I have a party here, I fear somebody is going into my rooms.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. That's unfortunately the scary thing, especially when you're having a party and you think it's all people you trust, is there might be someone who is just tempted by several $1 million that they can roll up and put in a coat pocket.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the picture that you see in front of you, that's a coup stick that I'm holding on to. That's an authentic Native American place of peace. Everybody thinks of the peace pipe. Well, the coup stick was what helped build a lot of peace as well, because it was a game of change and challenge. If that thing ever turns up missing, I'm going to cry like a child.
Yeah. I mean, we imbue a lot of power into objects. I think there's a reason that Superman has lasted the decades.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's all the more ironic that someone would steal a symbol of truth, justice, and the American way.
So are you going to start building, because you have a love for comics and stuff like that, maybe the continuation of Black Panther? You going to do anything on that?
Oh, gosh, not yet, but I would be fascinated to hear if someone else wrote about that.
They know how to reach you. They can get out there and say, get
Yeah.
Dana to do it. She knows what she's doing.
Yeah.
So now as this continues to build, Stealing Superman, listeners get the episodes one at a time. But the people that wait and want to binge watch it, we got to convince those people there's more to the story when you get time to digest it and wait for it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the first few episodes are already available. So
Yeah.
if you want to binge, there's already a little backlog. But I think with this type of story, it's absolutely fascinating when you can get the story doled out piece by piece and discover slowly what happened.
That's it. Well, I'm still proud of you in the way that you are taking journalism to a newer level, because you have all the space in the world to build the greater story.
Thank you so much. I've had so much fun.
Please come back to the show anytime in the future. The door is always going to be open for you, Dana.
Thank you so much. This was a pleasure.
You be brilliant today.
You too.